Head toward Norfolk, it was the same. 10 minutes went by, nearly 2 complete triangles. I had not prayed, not really prayed, for many years, and the habit came hard. Lord, please get me out of this bloody mess. When I had been airborne for 72 minutes, I knew no one would come. I felt the rage of despair welling up. I began screaming into the dead microphone. You bastards! Why don't you look at your radar screens? Why can't somebody see me? Oh, so damn drunk you can't do your jobs properly. The anger subsides. 5 minutes later, I knew that I was going to die that night. Strangely, I wasn't even afraid anymore, just enormously sad. It's a bad thing to die at 20 years of age with your life unlived, and the worst thing is not the fact of dying, but the fact of all the things never done. I dropped the left wing of the Vampire toward the moon to bring the aircraft onto the final leg of the last triangle. Down below the wingtip, against the sheen of the fog bank, a black shadow crossed the whiteness. It was another aircraft, low against the fog bank, keeping station with me through my turn, a mile down through the sky toward the fog. Being below me, I kept turning, wing down, to keep it in sight. The other aircraft also kept turning until the two of us had done one complete circle. Only then did I realize why he did not climb to my height and take up station on my wingtip. I eased the throttle back and began to slip down toward him. He kept turning. So did I. At 5,000 feet, I knew I was still going too fast for him. To reduce speed even more, I put out the air brakes, slowing down to 280 knots. Then he was with me, 100 feet off my wingtip, and we straightened out together, rocking as we tried to keep formation. The moon was to my right, and my own shadow masked his shape and form. Even so, I could make out the shimmer of 2 propellers whirling through the sky ahead of him. Of course, he could not fly at my speed. I was in a jet fighter, he in a piston-engined aircraft of an earlier generation. He held station alongside me for a few seconds, then banked gently to the left. I followed, keeping formation with him, for he was obviously the shepherd sent up to bring me down, and he had the compass and the radio, not I. For the first time, I could see him well. To my surprise, my shepherd was a de Havilland Mosquito, a fighter-bomber of World War II vintage. And then I remembered that the meteorological squadron at Gloucester used mosquitoes to help in the preparation of weather forecasts. Inside the cockpit of the Mosquito, I could make out against the light of the moon the muffled head of its pilot and the twin circles of his goggles as he looked out the side window toward me. Carefully, he raised his right hand till I could see it in the window. Fingers straight, palm downwards. He jabbed the fingers forward and down, meaning, "We are going to descend, formate on me." I nodded and quickly brought up my own left hand so he could see it, pointing forward to my own control panel with one forefinger, then holding up 5 splayed fingers. Finally, I drew my hand across my throat. By common agreement, this sign means I have only 5 minutes fuel left, then my engine cuts out. I saw the muffled, goggled, oxygen-masked head nod in understanding. Then we were heading downward toward the sheet of fog. He pulled out at 300 feet. The fog was still below us. I could imagine the stream of GCA instructions coming from the radar hut into the earphones of the man flying beside me. I kept my eyes on him, afraid of losing sight, watching for his every hand signal. 2 minutes later, he held up his clenched left fist in the window, then opened the fist to splay all 5 fingers against the glass. "Please lower your undercarriage." I moved the lever downward and felt the dull thunk as all 3 wheels went down. In the moonlight, I caught sight of the nose of the Mosquito. It had the letters J.K. painted on it, large and black, probably for call sign Jig King. He leveled out just above the fog layer, so low the tendrils of candy floss were lashing at our fuselages, and we went into a steady circular turn. I glanced at my fuel gauge. It was on 0, flickering feebly. For God's sake, hurry up, I prayed. I saw his left hand flash the dive signal to me. Then he dipped toward the fog bank. I followed, and we were in it. The visibility was down to near 0. No shape, no size, no form, no substance. Except that off my left wingtip, now only 40 feet away, was the form of a Mosquito flying with absolute certainty towards something I could not see. Only then did I realize he was flying without lights. For a second I was amazed, horrified by my discovery. Then I realized the wisdom of the man. Lights in fog are treacherous, hallucinatory, mesmeric. You can be attracted to them, not knowing whether they are 40 or 100 feet away from you. The tendency is to move toward them. for 2 aircraft in the fog, flying formation. That could easily spell disaster. Without warning, the shepherd pointed a single forefinger at me, then forward through the windscreen. It meant, there you are, fly on and land. I stared forward through the now streaming windshield. Nothing. Then, yes, something. A blur to the left, another to the right, then 2, one on each side. Ringed with haze, there were lights on either side of me in pairs, flashing past. I forced my eyes to see what lay between them. Nothing. Blackness. Then a streak of paint running under my feet. The center line. Frantically, I closed down the power and held her steady, praying for the vampire to settle. Bang, we touched. Bang, bang, another touch. She was drifting again, inches above the wet black runway. Bam, bam, bam-a-de-bam, rumble, rumble. She was down. The main wheels had stuck and held. Slowly, the vampire came to a stop. I found both of my hands clenched round the control column, squeezing the brake lever inward. I forget now how many seconds I held them there before I would believe we were stopped. There was no need to turn off the engine. It had finally run out of fuel as the vampire careered down the runway. I shut off the remaining systems and slowly began to unstrap myself from the seat. As I did so, to my left, through the fog, no more than 50 feet away, the Mosquito roared past me. I caught the flash of the pilot's hand in the side window, and then he was gone, up into the fog, before he could see my answering wave of acknowledgement. But I'd already decided to call up Gloucester and thank him personally. I expected the control tower truck to be alongside in seconds, for with an emergency landing, even on Christmas Eve, the fire truck, ambulance, and half a dozen other vehicles were always standing by. Eventually, 2 headlights came groping out of the mist and stopped 20 feet away. A voice called, "Hello there!" I stepped out of the cockpit, jumped from the wing to the tarmac, and ran toward the lights. At the wheel of the car was a puffed, beery face and a handlebar mustache. "That yours?" He nodded toward the dim shape of the vampire. "Yes," I said. "Yes, I just landed it." "Extraordinary," he said. "Quite extraordinary. You'd better jump in. I'll run you back to the mess." As we moved away from the vampire, I saw that I had stopped 20 feet short of a plowed field at the very end of the runway. "You're damned lucky," shouted, and he seemed to be having trouble with the foot controls. Judging by the smell of whiskey on his breath, that wasn't surprising. "Damned lucky," I agreed. "I ran out of fuel just as I was landing. My radio and all the electrical systems failed nearly 50 minutes ago over the North Sea." He digested the information carefully. "No radio?" "No radio," I said. "A dead box in all channels." Then how did you find this place?" he said. "I was guided in," I explained patiently. "They sent up a Shepherd aircraft to bring me down. It was one of the weather aircraft from RAF Gloucester. Obviously, he had radio, so we came in here in formation on GCA. Then when I saw the lights at the threshold of the runway, I landed myself." The man was obviously dense, as well as drunk. "Extraordinary," he said. "We don't have a GCA. We don't have any navigational equipment at all, not even a beacon." Now it was my turn to let the information sink in. "This isn't RAF Miriam St. George?" "No," he said. "This is RAF Minton." "I've never heard of it." "I'm not surprised. We're not an operational station. Haven't been for years. Minton's a storage depot." He stopped the car and got out. I saw we were standing a few feet from the dim shape of a control tower adjoining a long row of Nissen huts, evidently once flight rooms, navigational and briefing huts. The man returned and climbed shakily back behind the wheel. "Just turning the runway lights off," he said, and he belched. My mind was whirling. "Why did you switch them on?" I asked. "Well, it was the sound of your engine," he said. "I was in the officers' mess having a noggin. Old Joe suggested I listen out the window for a second. You sounded damn low, almost as if you were going to come down in a hurry. Thought I might be of some use. Remember, they never disconnected the old runway lights when they dismantled the station, so I ran down the control tower and switched them on." "I see," I said. But I didn't. "Where is RAF Minton exactly?" I asked him. 5 miles in from the coast," he said. "And where's the nearest operational RAF station with all the radio aids, including GCA?" Well, he thought for a moment. Must be Miriam St. George, he said. Mind you, I'm just a stores Johnny. That was the explanation. My unknown friend in the weather plane had been leading me straight in from the coast to Miriam St. George. By chance, abandoned old stores depot Minton lay right along the in-flight path to Miriam's runway, and this old fool had switched on his lights as well. Result, coming in on the last 10-mile stretch, I had plonked my vampire down into the wrong airfield. I was about to tell him not to interfere with modern procedures that he couldn't understand when I choked the words back. My fuel had run out halfway down the runway. I'd never have made Miriam 10 miles away. I'd have crashed in the